Hello everyone and welcome to the first ever episode of the Raw Report. The Seymour Football Netball Club is dipping its toes in the podcasting world. Not many country football netball clubs are doing it, but we're going to set the trend here. We will have some feature interviews with past players, our current coaches, officials, get really into the weeds with everything that's happening here at the Den. So this will be your one-stop shop for everything Seymour Football Netball Club related, and you can get this direct in your podcast feeds as you're doing right now. So make sure you subscribe through Apple Podcasts and Spotify. This will also be a great opportunity to share news from our sponsors, to keep up to date with the magnificent local businesses that support us and what they're up to. And we have gone straight to the very top for the first episode. It is the man who can get you the greatest interest rate in Australia. Quote, he's the president of the Seymour Football Netball Club. He's a 1991 senior premiership player, gun ruckman, mortgage broker extraordinaire, club sponsor through Loan Gallery. It's the great Pete Elliott. What an honour it must be, Pete. First episode of the Raw Report.
Well, Mitch, thanks for organising this, and I must say I'm so proud that we're doing this as a club. What we can give back to our supporters and sponsors is limited sometimes, or we feel like it is, but I think this is one great start that we can actually spread the good news of our club, our great club, and also help our sponsors out with spreading their great news of what they do. Great opportunity, Mitch, and thanks very much. I think you overplayed the greatness from my end, but I'll take it. Cheers.
Wonderful, and I should probably introduce myself as well, I guess. And I'm Mitch here, and I'll be your host, so strap in. And that is a great segue. It is going to be a fantastic chance for us to tell everyone what's happening around the club at the moment, but also delve a little bit into our club's history. We've got some premiership reunions this year. We had a fantastic one last year, and we know we've got a really rich history, which we're super keen to share with all our supporters, no matter where they may be. So we're going to start there with Pete. In terms of Pete's family and his affiliation with the Lions, you've got some football royalty in your bloodlines. Would you mind giving us a little bit of a rundown of the family tree?
Yeah, certainly, Mitch. My cousin, a fellow by the name of Wes Shelton, the son of Bluey Shelton, and myself quite often laugh because if we had been a horse or a thoroughbred, we'd probably be playing AFL or played AFL or running around Flemington. But we both plied our craft out in the country in the bush footy. But starting with my family, I guess that's making it all about me, but why not? My father was a long-term servant of this club. He played in a 59 flag with the club, won a best and fairest at his latter years at the club when he was about 30-something in 72. So Dad had a long, rich affiliation with the club. He also managed to play some games at Essendon and also at the Dogs. He coached a number of different country sides out in the Wimmera. He played for flags at Tongala and other places around which don't come to mind at the moment. And then on the other side of the family, we've got Bluey Shelton, who everybody's aware of, but he was the lucky man that married my dad's sister. And so Bluey sort of speaks for himself for what his achievements were.
Wonderful. So it's certainly passed down the generations, and we've now got the Lubecks you're connected to as well. So they're a little bit more annoying than the Elliott side, but they're running around as well, which is fantastic. And it must make you pretty proud to see that next generation come through. I imagine as a dad, you probably would have wanted your young fella to follow in your footsteps and play some game at the Lions. So how's that go with both your son, Alex Briggsy Elliott, running around and that Lubeck connection?
Yeah, well, certainly speaking to the Lubeck connection, we've got young Lewis running around in the seniors and also Cooper. Cooper's retired this year, probably, in my opinion, a little bit early, but he's got greater things to do. But Cooper is a very natural footballer and a great athlete. But I think his younger brother may, and I don't know, he's got to put it on the park this year, but may go past him at some stage. Lewis certainly showing all the signs of a senior footballer. He's got a fair bit to do, of course, but he's certainly showing some signs. And young Briggsy, well, he's been around. He's now, I think this is his third year. He's he's always good for a handful of senior games for the year. And I think with him, it's up to himself. But both boys in particular have got themselves nice and fit, as has the squad. Really looking forward to great things from both of those boys. Obviously, being a father of Briggsy, you try to not have your own trainer hat on, but I just wish him all the best for this year, and also the teams. Yeah.
Now, that's also a very good segue there. We're talking about athletic key position players. Ruckman, like Briggsy is, he swings around the ground and does a bit of work in the ruck, just like yourself back in the day. Can you give us a bit of a rundown on your career? You had a pretty solid stint here at the Lions, but also played at some other clubs as well.
Yeah, Mitch. I played for the Lions from the mid 80s, so the 86s or late 80s, 86, 87. I started playing some senior footy there. Hung around the club long enough, and in 91 we were lucky enough to win a flag. And what was special about that year is, if you talk to anybody from that premiership side, will bore you to snores, but it was really local talent, and I think that's what this town can breed, is some pretty damn good footballers. And we were lucky enough to have a great coach come in by the name of Robin White. He actually attracted a lot of blokes that were actually playing district football or for other clubs. And it just came together, that 91 season, in a perfect storm, really, where we were damn hard to beat, and we took home the chocolates on the final day. So that was pretty good. That was 91 was my last year. I'd been travelling back, depending on where I was living, up to 2 hours for a Thursday night training session for a number of years. I was with National Bank working around the area, and I had also been lucky enough to find a lovely lady and Alison, and got married. So we decided we'd call Alexandra home, and they come knocking on the door. So I assistant coached over there and also played 4 seasons with Alex. No success, but funnily enough, the year after I left, they won a flag, so that might be saying something. And then, I took my craft up to Bright for a year, and then gave it away for a couple of years, and then went up to Tungamar and didn't play in the premiership. It was part of their premiership group, I guess you'd say. And I was in my early 30s by then and probably had enough. You mentioned the word athletic. Any of my mates listening to this would probably not use my name and athletic in the same sentence, but I tried hard.
Wonderful. Well, you got the premiership that mattered. You got the 91 one at Seymour. And that first fragment of your response there, it probably ties me neatly into what I was going to ask next. And that's that local talent in the 91 flag. Even to, I guess, the younger generation, there's some pretty well-known names in there. We're talking Bender, Cook, Cox, Martin, Ben Davey, who's obviously our senior coach now, Cole, Locke, Solomon, O'Sullivan, just to name a few. So it must have been pretty pleasing, to win that premiership with some of the best Lions we've probably ever seen, and people who really are Seymour through and through, and a lot of them still actively involved in the club.
Absolutely. I mean, running through those names gives you a little bit of goosebumps, actually, Mitch. There's most of those names, in fact, all of those names are still great supporters of this club. There's past presidents, there's people that are still donating their time and effort and money. And you talk to any one of those clubs, any one of those guys, and they have this football club and netball club in their heart and their blood. So, like for instance, and I don't want to name names, but I'll bring one story to mind that Matthew O'Sullivan, doesn't need to be here at 7:30 on a Saturday morning, but put his hand out to give me a hand. It was a great opportunity when he came down to give us a chop out setting up of a Saturday morning, because the day starts pretty early, and he got down there when he could, when he wasn't playing golf. And so that's the sort of characters that group had, that nothing was ever too hard for them, really. Yeah.
And there's definitely a few characters in there, and one of them, Chris Martin. We've got some reunions coming up this year, which we'll get you to speak about briefly. He's pretty keen that 25-year reunion should be even bigger than 50 and 60-year reunions, but that might just be a Mardo thing. But we do have a couple of very special ones coming up. So what's in the works? What have we got? We've got 3 reunions this year.
Not discounting the 91 mid decade reunion, which I like the idea of. We missed out on ours because of that thing called COVID. But look, I guess I'll start from the most recent. We got 06 was a big year for the club. Football wise, we managed to jag a senior and a reserves premiership. So those guys will get back here and celebrate, and we'll certainly publicise that round when they're going to be here, because if the 05 boys were any indication, it will be a ripping weekend, and those guys certainly obviously played hard, but they know how to celebrate well as well, and then we've also got some other reunions coming up. Mitch touched on it. We've got the 76 flag, which, interestingly enough, was the first flag for Seymour in the Golden Valley, but also was the first year in the Golden Valley. So that's not a bad get. Probably going to a league that was seen as maybe a stronger league at the time. So jagging a premiership in the first year, and the previous year they'd actually won a flag in the Ranga North East as well. So that was a pretty special time for the club. And then we've got the 66 flag, and so a lot of people of that era and in those decades would almost say that the 66 was one of our best teams all around on paper that the club's ever presented. So, yeah, a couple of very proud and very events and times that we're going to look forward to over the year.
Yeah, that's very exciting, and we go from the 66 crew probably tea and scones in an early night to 06, which could be very interesting, and hopefully no phone calls from any establishments to the current president on Monday morning.
That would be good.
And returning to today, last year was your first year as president, taking over from Gerard O'Sullivan, who did the job for 10 years, our equal longer-serving president. You've done a pretty incredible job in your first year. So what was that like, taking the role over? Was it what you expected? I'm sure it probably wasn't. And was there anything that surprised you about taking on that role?
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Well, look, firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank Gerard and his crew for the job they did over a long period of time. That leads into, it's a massive job. I've got a couple of mates, and you can always rely on your mates to point things out for you, but there's a couple of mates that think being the president of the Seymour Football Netball Club may be my first full-time job, but I'll refute that. I'm very busy through the day. But what surprised me is the band of helpers and people that come out of the woodwork. I was feeling a little bit, not stressed, but a bit uneasy leading into the season, where there's a couple of positions we didn't have filled. We filled those. There was just a few little things that in my mind weren't quite going the way. But it's amazing, the people that have this football club and netball club, their first or their best interest, because all of a sudden, the guys that organise the social committee, they just get organised, they get stuff done, they're very respectful, they present stuff to the committee. People behind the scenes just doing stuff that if you didn't have the actual roadmap, you wouldn't know that needed to be done. So, and for instance, Gerard was down helping out the first home game, because he obviously was thinking, well, this is a big thing. He may have been taking himself back, and it is a big thing. And one thing Gerard said is, get yourself a good pair of runners, because you're going to do some steps. So, but yeah, look, there's been a few things that surprised me. But one of the greatest things was how things just fell together, and with good people around, it just happens. Yeah, so it's good.
Yeah, and it's definitely a easy club to volunteer at, if I can say that. So if you're thinking of getting involved here, there's always a role, and you will definitely feel very appreciated. And in saying that, off-field, things ran smoothly. On-field, a very good finish in the George Hunter Club Championship, which reflects how consistent we were across the board, and a couple of premierships with the B-Res girls and the reserves. So what are your goals for this year on and off-field? What are we looking to achieve in 2026?
Yeah, well, obviously we want 8 premierships.
Perfect.
But if that can't be delivered, we're wanting some success. I think you're not we're not here to run second, I guess. I think we want to win. I would love to at least get one premiership out of the 8 groups that we've got, and I think that's very possible. Both the netball and the football have been, from the coaches and the feedback we're getting, there's obviously been some good recruiting going on in both spaces. So we'd like to jag a premiership. But that being said, the wins and losses are just one aspect of any club. And we really, we're starting to focus on some of the stuff that maybe from the committee point of view that we can control off-field to build what we see as being a successful club. So we're in early stages of talking about some strategic plans and master plans. And I think if you've got a strong club off-field, you can build a stronger club on-field. So that's the key focus for this year. Last year was really for a lot of the guys that are on the executive committee especially, and not the executive committee runs the club, but those guys are pulling some levers. It was really getting in the seat and finding out how the club runs, really, the machinations of it. This year is how can we make it better? What plans can we put in place to drive that? And we're starting some early processes in that, early conversations, but you've got to start somewhere. So I'd like to really build a strong and resilient and robust off-field.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think that's definitely the vibe around the place. It feels like we've got the walking down pat. Now it's time to start jogging, running, sprinting, and bring that off-field success onto the field as well. So fantastic. Now, one thing people do say about this club, and I think it got a fair run at presentation night, is every person who got up and spoke said something about functions, and obviously we are very responsible. We follow all the relevant regulations, but people do talk about the fantastic culture here at this club. From your perspective, you've been at a few different clubs, as you've mentioned. What makes the Seymour Football Netball Club special compared to some of those other clubs?
Yeah, good question, Mitch. I think that with the social functions, I think people see them as a real chance to maybe reset their week or reset their month and get around and get away from just the normal day-to-day activities. Playing sport, sometimes there's a lot of internal pressures that you put on yourself. I think the social functions, if they ran well, help sort of break down those barriers a bit. I'm no social worker at all, but just from, I think people manage to let down their hair, possibly there might be some blossoming relationships there that can only help a club out in the future, possibly. So I think it's just a really good thing to take everybody's mind away from. We don't have to worry about raising money tonight, really, because the social function is going to help us out there, and we can all have a good time, sit back and relax. So I'd like to see that continue. As I touched on before, the social committee, from my experience last year, were just dynamic. They just, ran the social functions really well, and we just want to build on that.
Beautiful. Romance, beers, and a good time. That's a fantastic recipe for success. I think you can apply that anywhere. Last of the extended questions here. So you've been a player here, a premiership winner. You're also a long-term sponsor through Loan Gallery Finance, and now president. When you look back, obviously a lot of your life's been devoted to this club. What does it mean to you personally?
Look, it's amazing. Again, Mitch, very good question, but it's amazing when you don't have something right in front of you, you don't realise how much you missed it. And I worked away. I worked away for 20-odd years. Then when I came back to Seymour, I really didn't have much to do with the club. It was always bubbling there in the background, but especially with your friendship groups, because it's just right there in front of you. But having been back involved for the last 4 or 5 years, you just realise what a great place this is to be around, what a great place we have for our kids of the town and the surrounding areas. And it's just, I think it's just bringing that, it's a community, and it's part of your whole fabric, really. So it's hard to answer exactly what it means, Mitch, but it's certainly when you don't have it and you come back, you realise how much you actually miss it, and you just miss what I enjoy most. Apart from the social activity, what I enjoy most is just people achieving what they want to achieve on and off the field. So it's a big part of with my career. I've loved helping people get into their homes or buy their investments or whatever. So I think that's the same sort of philosophy I apply here. Is that you just love people being better. Yeah.
Wonderful. And I did forget to mention you also coached for a little bit with our reserves team who have been very good for a long time. So I'm glad we got through that question without anyone getting too emotional, which is fantastic. I'm sure that won't always be the case. Now, just to finish us off, we've got some rapid fire questions. So we're going to hit you between the eyes with a few of these. The first one, there's only 4, so we won't keep you too much longer. Your favourite line around the club can be a player, non-player, your favourite personality.
Darts, honestly, apart from you. I've got a great affection for the greatest man alive, Paul Lewis. Louis, I think if he could sleep down here through the winter, I think he would. Not only does he do a marvellous job in making sure our players, both netball and footballers, are well cared for, heading up the training department. You can find him worrying about the bins. He just he has a little bit of him in all of his clubs, so he's certainly a fan favourite of mine anyway.
Absolutely, he's a wonderful gentleman, Paul Lewis, and we're very lucky to have him around.
Yeah.
The best player you've played with can be Seymour, non-Seymour?
Yeah, this gets banded around a lot, but there's a fellow by the name of Darren Comey who played in the 91 flag, and, like Jono is in the conversation, but Darren is a sort of player that was almost unstoppable. So Darren gets a nod. He's very hard to stop. It doesn't matter how many players the opposition played on him, he always found a way of flying above the pack and taking a great pack mark. He was hard as nails, so if anybody wanted to mix it up with him, he was very accommodating in that department as well. So for me, DC was the greatest player I've played with.
Wonderful. That's a bit of a blast from the past, which is fantastic. He won a couple of league goal kickings, I think, as well. Yeah. So fantastic. Best player you've played against? Not someone who gave you a touch-up one day when you weren't on top of things, but the best player you've ever played against.
I'll have to put some thought into this, but there was a fellow by the name of Tony Jones. Believe it or not, I used to sort of play across the halfback and half-forward line on occasion, and Tony Jones somehow managed, he played for Tongala, and I somehow managed to end up on him for some reason. Probably Jono was dominating in the ruck or something, and I'd have to chase him. And I touched on my athletic ability, and not to downplay myself at all, but he had it in spades and I had it in lesser spades, let's put it that way. So I followed him around a fair bit, desperately trying to get a kick or stopping him getting a kick. Yeah.
Wonderful. And you've mentioned Jono a few times. He'll be a very interesting podcast guest, so we'll definitely look at getting the great Jono Sol on here at some point. He might be reluctant, but I'm sure we'll be able to twist his arm. The final quick-fire question, best line you've ever seen? Could be when you were younger, when you were playing, or perhaps even in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, look, best player, I don't know, but he's probably really close to this in this conversation. And again, this is going to go back a bit, but there's a fellow by the name of Tony Barnes. For some reason, I just loved his work. He was pretty spectacular. There was a fellow by the name. There's a couple here. Nugget Greenshields was a very sort of hardened ruckman, which I enjoyed watching as well. So there's also like Jono was pretty. When I wasn't playing and Jono was playing, he was pretty easy on the eye. He was a very competitive bloke that could dominate a game. But there was a fella. Yeah, Robbie Douglas. When I first started getting back watching the Lions, I fell in love with Robbie Douglas. He used to just dominate the half-back line, and I'm sure he was a pillar of strength for all those premiership wins that those guys won. But I'll probably put Robbie Douglas on top, just the way he used to be able to control that half-back line. He was fantastic. Apart from Tomo, of course. Yeah, so.
The great Tomo. And maybe one without any notice. Who do you most like seeing who's running around the footy oval right now?
Oh, right now. This is very Nicholas Quigg. I love seeing Quiggy do his work. Just no fuss. He goes about his business. So I love watching Quiggy. I know he gets I'm looking forward to big things out of Quiggy. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Quiggy's always happy to tell you how good he was Saturday night as well. So Quiggy's favourite player as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably where we'll leave it for our very first episode of the Raw Report. A big thank you to the great Pete Elliott for joining us. If you'd like to advertise on the Raw Report, our sponsor's more than welcome. Get in touch. We can run some of your promotions, news and ads through our podcast to make sure it gets in the ears of all the Lions faithful. We will kick off on April 4 our season against Benalla, so we've still got a little bit of runway before we get stuck into things proper, a few practice matches to come. Don't forget to subscribe to the Raw Report wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure when we are back in your ears, it is there directly waiting for you. So we'll catch you soon. Thank you very much for joining us for the first episode of the Raw Report, and go Lions.
Go Lions.